So we've got manual, scan the wind. Got a 7 1/4 inch blade, dust bag, and looks like the hold down clamp. That may be it. Let's pull this styrofoam out of here. Saw in plastic, nice compact saw by comparison to the actual my 12 inch. All right, so these are the two 12 inch miter saws that I own. This is the Dewalt Flex Bolt 12 inch miter saw, and back over here is the Milwaukee Fuel miter saw. This one is only battery powered. This particular saw is actually battery powered, and it has an adapter to run off of mains power. So I decided to go with 12 inch miter saws because they have obviously the largest cutting capacity, and they basically you can do anything you want to do with them. Now these are not the only miter saws I have. I actually have another miter saw over here. Alright, this here is an older, this is probably my oldest miter saw. It is a 7 1/4 inch Ryobi miter saw. Now, I used to own the 12 inch Ryobi miter saw, and I actually got rid of that because I wanted to move over to a primarily battery operated shop, and hence why I purchased both the Dewalt and the Milwaukee, and I kept this one because it's 18 volt tool. This is just a simple miter saw. It's not a sliding miter saw. It does bevel to one side 45 degrees. I don't use it that often. I used it more in the beginning of my woodworking journey, I would say plenty of years ago, and since it's pretty much kind of set. Every now and then I will use it just for small projects here and there, but after using these two saws here, I haven't found as much use for this smaller saw. Now, the thing about these two saws, they are both compound miter saws, which means you can get the dual bevels, you get compound angles that you can cut, which this saw does not offer. So once you get used to these types of functions and features, along with the sliding functionality giving you a greater cut capacity, it kind of highlights the lack of features on a basic miter saw. Now, there's nothing wrong with a basic miter saw or chop saw, whatever you want to call it. However, when you do experience the features that are offered on these brands here, or these particular models, because Ryobi makes miter saws that actually have dual bevel compound miter saws as well. I do not believe at this time that they make a 12 inch that does that is actually battery powered, and that is a compound miter saw. I do believe they have a 10 inch, but not a 12 inch. So anyways, and I did consider getting that 12 inch, or sorry, I did consider getting that 10 inch Ryobi many years ago before I invested in these tools. The thing that kind of held me back from moving forward with that purchase was, I owned the 10 inch Ryobi table saw as well, and they did not have a battery operated table saw. Now, of course, today, 2022, they have just announced that they're going to have a battery powered table saw, which is good, and I believe they're updating their 10 inch miter saw as well, which is actually really good. But obviously prior to then, I decided I wanted to move to a primarily battery operated shop, hence going back to why I have these miter saws. So this is just a long-winded way to get around to the point that I like the features of these, and I purchased these because they can handle their cut capacity and anything under a 10-inch saw, a 7 1/4 inch saw. They can do it all. However, these are not necessarily the best tool for every single job, and sometimes a smaller saw is the solution, or the better solution, the better fit for the job. And as a result of that, I did my research. I looked into the Dewalt 7 1/4 inch compound miter saw, and I also looked into the Milwaukee Fuel 7 1/4 inch miter saw. Now the Dewalt was cheaper, and it was locally available here in my area. However, there were certain features that I felt like were on the Milwaukee saw that were not available on the Dewalt, and so I decided to go ahead, even though it's more expensive, I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on the Milwaukee Fuel 7 1/4 inch compound sliding miter saw. So that's what we have here. Let's come in and get a closer look. So we've got the Milwaukee Fuel brushless 7 1/4 inch miter saw. It's a nice small footprint. If you look at it in comparison to its big brother, which is right here, and you can see a vast difference in size and obviously a vast difference in weight. But the actual design is fairly similar with the handle, the actual arrangement and setup of the saw. This is the 7 1/4 is essentially a miniature size of this 12-inch saw. Now that is not the case when you talk about the 10-inch. The 10-inch Milwaukee Fuel miter saw has a design difference where the rails actually slide out of the base of the saw. Now for my research on that, that saw actually has some issues with deflection. That saw goes for $5.99 at the Home Depot, and it comes with a battery and a charger. I think I will be okay with both extremes, having the 12-inch and then having the 7 1/4 inch, because this will get me a lot of the capacity, meaning this 7 1/4 will get me a lot of the capacity of that 10-inch saw, and anything that this can't handle, obviously the guy over here to my left will take care of the rest. Now the reason why I actually purchased this saw recently, my wife actually wants to make some picture frames, and I was already looking at this saw just being gaudy and wanting to, you know, have the range or whatever. At one point in time I did think that I was going to buy both the 7 or all three of the Milwaukee Fuel saws, and I just hadn't done it because, you know, this is a pretty pricey saw. I mean, bare tool is $450 regular price or normal price, and that's what I paid for it. But my wife wants to make some picture frames, and I am still making a dollhouse. And with that dollhouse, I have been actually cutting down strips of wood to trim out the doors and the windows, and I actually just cut like 4 pieces and kind of buttered them up over the windows. Didn't quite like that look, so I decided to go with a mitered look, and I started cutting the miters on the 12-inch Milwaukee Fuel saw, and I just felt like for these fine small pieces, a saw like this would be more appropriate. And since my wife was already wanting to make picture frames, and I feel more comfortable with her using this saw as opposed to the 12-inch until she gets more experience, both of our goals kind of aligned and kind of contributed towards this particular purchase. So anyways, just going over a little bit about the saw. It's got the actual shadow feature. You've got a light switch here to actuate the light, and it uses the shadow feature to show your cut line, which I do like. You've got the safety trigger where you actually flip this lever and then pull the trigger to actually actuate the tool. It is dual bevel. However, to actually use the dual bevel, you don't have to take these off. but they do have to be pretty far out in order for the saw to actually move all the way to each side. So not a terrible thing, but you know, it is what it is. So here there's a knob on the back that you unlock, and the saw bevels all the way over to the well, I guess that's my left, or facing you it's my right. And then there's a knob in the back that you pull, and you can actually pull the tool all the way over and beveling the opposite way, 45 degrees. So nice flexibility for this small tool that locks back in at the 0 detent. You've got an onboard tool in the back side to be able to change the blade. With the blade change, there's actually a arbor button. So the arbor button is actually on the completely opposite side of the saw, and it's underneath here on the bottom. So there's the arbor lock to be able to change the blade. The back end of the actual tool I have here is also utilized to, there's a screw on your 0 indicator. There's a little red arrow, and the back side, which is like an Allen key to adjust that just in case you're out of 0. You can realign that on the back of the tool, and it stores on the tool, which is good, so you can keep up with it. You've got the dust bag that goes on here. It can take all of the Milwaukee Fuel batteries. It touts like, I believe, 600 cuts on a 5 amp hour battery, which is pretty good. You've got your plastic dust straw, your pin to actually lift up the saw is here. The knob on the back right here is utilized to activate the slide function, and it feels pretty good. You've got these 2 handles in the base to be able to carry the saw around, along with a handle here on the top. What else would I say? So as far as the bevel, it actually bevels all the way to 45 to the left and 45 to the right. It does not, it actually can go up as high as, it looks like, 48 degrees to the right and 48 degrees to the left. So, but there's no detent at those 48 marks. Now to lock it down, you'll actually just push down here, and that locks it in so that it does not actually, you know, move when you're actually trying to make a cut. If you lift it up, there's a trigger under the bottom to move the saw back, and if you switch this down, the saw can spin back, and it does not go into any of the detents at all. So I could put it here at this, like, that's like 2 degrees if I wanted to. You lift it up, you pull the trigger up and let this knob come loose, and then you go back to going into your detents. Now, I have not checked level of this saw or squareness as of yet. I believe with the project that I'm going to be doing, it's not going to necessarily require an extreme degree of accuracy, because the project will be getting painted, and any kind of imperfections will just get filled with wood putty and painted. So I'm not too concerned about that. I just wanted to kind of go out fairly quickly and get this saw so that I could kind of really amp back up my work on the Dollhouse, because it's actually slowed me down in the shop. It's really kind of brought me to a crawl, simply because I realized that I have the idea of the Dollhouse in my head, but I don't have the finished project in my head. And so I spent a lot of the week basically kind of going back over ideas and designs of what I want to do. Still not 100% certain on the final product, but getting this saw at least is going to put me in the direction of going ahead and cutting out all those miters, and then there's a few design issues that I'm considering, and then obviously I need to assemble the project. and get to doing painting and all of these things. So I basically just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a introduction of the new saw into the shop.